Hi, I'm Chemical Pursuit. I'm a drum and bass artist predominantly. I will be looking at other genres in the near future, but my main focus, I imagine, will always be drum and bass. Has been for the last few years. I can't really see it changing, to be honest with you. But today I'm going to be showing you how I've done a bootleg by a chap called JOYRYDE, and the tune's entitled On Fire. It starts as his version is like a bass house version, and I've ramped it up into drum and bass. I'm going to show you how I've done that. I won't be sharing with you every single little parameter and how I've done things exactly. I'm going to be giving you some direction today. I'll be showing you my processes and how I've achieved a certain result, but I won't always be going into too much intricate detail because this is part of a sound that I've been developing, and I would urge you to do the same. I just want to help guide you, especially if you're just starting off. I hope you find this tutorial beneficial. But yeah, we just have a quick look at Beatport here. The album is entitled Brave by JOYRYDE, who is the main artist, and other tunes on the album feature Mika Means, Nole, Magilla, Roger Montgomery, Young's Teflon and Gold. The tune I've bootlegged is this one here, On Fire. I'm going to leave links to both the album and this tune on its own in the description. Before we get into the main project, I just wanted to share with you quickly the importance of project templates. You will save yourself a lot of time and effort if you have something that's pre-prepped to go from. When I first started, I thought project templates would be limiting, and surely you would end up with a similar result every time, but that's just not what happens. You spend some time setting up your instruments, what instruments you find yourself using a lot, perhaps some processing on the buses, what you've got in your master chain as well, which I use metering tools, which I'm going to show you. And that is there to go every single time. And every time I discover a slightly better way of doing something, I can then save that and introduce that back into the template. So this idea that I've got, I'm constantly expanding on. Let's have a look at the template. So in Logic, and I'm sure you can do it in other workstations, but in Logic, you select New from Template. You got the project templates which they provide. They also do a demo project, which is, especially if you're starting out, quite interesting. Have a look at that perhaps. And then you got my templates which I've created. Now, for example, I've got D&B template. It's more acoustic sounding kit. And then I got quite obsessed with electronic synthetic kind of kits. So I've got this other template called Electronic Delight, which I will be is going to be an album one day. So please don't steal that name off me. And then here we've got, in the project template, we've got all of our sidechain triggers set up. And for those who don't know what a sidechain trigger is, for example, if you had a compressor and you wanted the compressor to duck the signal at the beginning of every 2 bars. In this instance, let's just use the first audio signal, and I've got the sidechain trigger at the beginning of every 2 bars. So what that will do is it will quite simply duck the signal at the beginning of every 2 bars. I would like something a little quicker perhaps, so I could change that to audio 4, which is quarter notes. You see, and now it ducks the signal every quarter note. Alright. And then I've got some options. I've got beginning of every 2 bars, every 1 bar, every half bar, every quarter bar and on every snare. Now, the reason why I've created a snare sidechain on the audio channel as opposed to just using the snare bus is because, for example, I might have some ghost notes going to my snare bus. And for those who don't know what ghost notes are, you've got your main snare hit, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and that is what I've got on a sidechain signal. And if I had my sidechain trigger coming from the snare bus, I would have all these other notes triggering the sidechain. So it goes 1, when all I wanted was. So I hope that makes sense to you. If we look further at the sidechain triggers, I've got some ones for creative purposes down here. Yeah, so maybe what I've got set up is not quite what I want it to do. I might want a longer sidechain, and then I might want it on the 4th note only, and then another one here. You know, maybe I might want something like that. These sidechain channels allow me to be a little bit more creative. Okay, and these are not going to an output. Yeah, they are simply there to trigger a sidechain. Right, moving on, we got a spacer. Spacers are very easy to make. I just went into went into a MIDI file, created a MIDI section. My mouse is being funny, excuse me, it does this sometimes, it has moments. Okay, and then I've renamed that blank, change the colour to whatever I want it to. And then I've got a project spacer there. Yeah, it just helps organise the project. It's a nice way of doing it. And then I've got my hi-hats, my kick drum, my snare, which is comprised of the snare fundamental. For those who don't know what fundamental frequencies are, do your homework, please. And then I've got some noise layers on that. I've got my sub and another noise layer. And could you imagine if I didn't have this template, I would have to set this up every single time. Yeah, I got sick of doing that, which is why I made it. And if we look here at the mixer, I've then got some bussing set up as well. Yeah, so for those who don't know what a bus is, for example, I've got my hi-hats here. They are all going into bus 1. Yeah, so if I just solo those quickly, you can see they're going into bus 1. Bus 1 parallels to bus 3, and they parallel bus 2 as well. Okay, so if I turn the parallel signal off, you're going to see that bus 2 here, it stops working. Yeah, so I've just got the same signal going to bus 2. And then I've got the rest of the drums going to some buses. Yeah, I've got my kick bus, I've got my snare bus, I've got my shuffle bus. I haven't actually got any shuffle there now, but it's there. It's an option. I probably won't use that exact same chain, but I'll do something like that. And then I've got all of these going to my main drum bus. And that's just got some saturation on it. It's got some compression, parallel compression, a little bit of reverb, and some clipping. And then on the bass, I've got my sub going here, and then I will no doubt it'll end up looking something like this. I'll show you in the main project, you'll see. So I'd probably have some parallels coming off. Yeah, I've got my sub signal going to 24, and then they all go to the main bass output, which is just EQ, saturation, multi-band compression, a touch of reverb, more equalization, limiting, and some sidechain compression, just to duck the signal when the drums come through. Now, I do hear that LFO tool is better for this. When I have a little money spare, I would like to purchase that. But for the time being, I'm just sidechain compressing. Yeah, so I've got my main output here, and that consists of, I've got Logic's gain utility with the mono on. All that means is I can just reference my mix in mono, which is very important, because if you do happen to play your tunes off mono systems, you may have some issues regarding the stereo signal, and it may just sound awful. So do reference your mix in mono. You've got some equalization. Maybe I might want to see where things are sitting on the piano roll, for example, here. I quite like this feature of FabFilter's Pro Q3. I think it does it on the Pro Q2 as well, if I remember correctly. You know, I can select C1, for example. There you go, 32.703 Hertz. And, you know, it's quite a good way to work out a fundamental frequency, for example. And then I've got FabFilter's Pro L2. If I'm in a creative process, or perhaps I want to reference my mix, what it might sound like coming through a limiter, that's quite useful. I can just push it. You know, I want to be getting about -6 dB, and yeah, that's quite a useful little tip. Then I've got some level meter, loudness meter, multimeter. These are all Logic's plugins. Find that in the metering section. Okay. And then you've got Blue Cat's oscilloscope. For those who don't know what an oscilloscope is, it looks a little something like this. It's just a two-dimensional view of the waveform. Then I've got Ozone's Imager 2. This is a free plugin you can download from Isotope's website. Just to check my stereo signal. And then Sonar works. I don't use it as much as I used to, but have a look at that. It's quite interesting. And then I've got Span, which is my spectral analyzer, which gives you a view like that. Okay. So we're now going to get into the main project. Here it is, the grand finale, the moment you've all been waiting for. Drum roll, please. So yeah, let's have a look. Let's have a look at the original track first. Yeah.
The missile is aimed to blow you out of the frame.
Okay, so that's the original, and obviously I didn't have the individual stems. Yeah, so I didn't have the drum parts individually, I didn't have the vocal parts individually, etc, etc. So I had to think, how am I gonna manipulate this audio so it sits right in the mix when I've got my own drums going on, I've got my own bass going on, all this kind of stuff. So what I started off by doing was I set the project tempo to 125, which is the same tempo as the original track. I then went along and chopped out little snippets of parts that I needed. Yeah.
The missile is aimed to blow you out of the frame.
A little bits like that. Yeah, you got the little steel drums there. So I needed some of that. Needed the vocal samples. Yeah, and I went along. I quite simply got my scissors out. And I went on a little cutting spree. Cut. 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 And then what you want to do is you want to bounce these out. Yeah, probably with no tail actually. You bounce it out with no tail. Also, when you're bouncing things, more often than not, just a little crossfade, just to stop the audio file from clicking. You might have to increase the crossfade, but for the most part that should do. Okay, and I bounced that out. Oh no, I did it with the tail again, I'm so sorry. And yeah, so bounce that out. And then I want to put this on polyrhythmic and I want to speed it up. Yeah, I want to speed this up because obviously I'm going into drum and bass. This is 125 BPM. Drum and bass is anywhere between 168 to 182. I don't like 182. I just about like 180. Yeah. I'm not pursuing that many chemicals anymore. So, you know, whatever floats your boat though. If that's what you like, cool. It's completely subjective after all. No offence. But I myself, I kicked it up to 174. I play my sets anywhere from 174 to, I say 178 is about as fast as I'm willing to go. Depends if I take any more chemicals though, isn't it? Anyway, so what it is, to implement the tempo change, I needed a section to speed up. Yeah? And in Logic, you press G to get the global settings up. Part of that is the tempo. And I quite simply went from 125 to 174. Now, because I've bounced it out and I've selected the polyphonic time stretching algorithm on Logic's Flex tool, and you can, you know, there's a few other ones to select from. You've got rhythmic here. This retains the transients, it's very good for drums, but there's no rules as such. You can do what you like as long as it sounds good and as long as it sounds fitting. And then because I've got the Flex tool on, that is now going to speed up naturally. So you can hear here, let's do it from where it is. As you can see, it's now 1.7. This part is now 174. Yeah, and this is now, yeah, you can hear it's now sped up. Yeah, I'll give it a little loop. Yeah, as opposed to okay. So I hope that makes a lot of sense to you. Okay, and yeah, I needed to implement a tempo change. Now, the way that I've done that is quite simply got the global tempo change up, added this, added a little dot, yeah, and then automated what gradient I wanted the tempo change to happen. In this case, it's pretty average, but you know, whatever you want to do, I suppose. And that sounds like this. Okay, so let's get into the drums. Now, with the drums, there's not an awful lot going on. with this track, and with every good track that I've written, it's just got whatever's there, it's right. There's not too much going on, it's just right. Yeah. And when I first started composing on Logic and writing dance music, I tried to have far too much going on. Let me give you an example. I used to play in a band when I was younger. Yeah, I played in a couple. The last band I ever played in, there was originally 5 of us. There was me, the drummer. There was a guitarist. He was a good guitarist. Bass player, phenomenal bass player. He's actually playing with Peter Andre now. And who else? We had a singer. He was an outstanding singer. I'm not sure where he is, but I'm sure he's done bits himself. And then we had a keyboard player. Now, the keyboard player didn't really contribute to our sound. Bless him. If you're watching this, I mean no offence. We're at where we're at. And it didn't really make our music sound any better. As a matter of fact, we sounded better with less. Now, these drums here, and this track in general, is quite minimal. When it kicks up into the other section, there's a little bit more going on. But, for the first part, there's not an awful lot going on. But I think it sounds fantastic. So let's have a quick listen to the drums. I've got some hi-hats and a kick drum to begin with. Here comes a fill. Little click comes in. Right, and now we've got a shaker and a bongo that comes in, or conga. The reason why there's not that much going on is because the other parts of the track really contribute to the drums. And for example, you've got this noise, which fills everything out really quite nicely. And then, as I said earlier, when I was chopping up the vocals, because I'm chopping it out of the main track, often they were layered with some kind of percussive element. So what I had to do is EQ out the low end if there's any bass or anything, or perhaps a kick drum that I didn't want to be there. And then I just have to be, quite clever and creative about the way that I went about using these vocal hits. So as you can hear here, they contribute to the drums quite nicely. Yeah, and then I had the steel drums, which I took from the original. Sound like this. Yeah, and that's essentially how the drums are done. So just to go into a little bit more depth of these parts. Now the noise layer I'm going to keep quite a secret because I'm very happy with how that's come out. And, just to give you some clue, it's just noise with loads of compression, basically. Near enough. And you've got this vocal layer. Yeah, the way that I've done that is, I've got my little vocal hits here. And then as you can hear here, just to keep it interesting, I've just used different time stretching algorithms yeah, just use different time stretching algorithms. So yeah, it just keeps it a little bit interesting to the ear. And then with the steel drums, there's quite a lot of processing going on. I've bounced these out to audio to save my CPU, yeah, because it just could not handle it. Yeah, so with the steel drums, I've got some soothe on there. Because the time stretching will introduce aliasing tones. And if I'm going to distort with aliasing tones that have been created by the time stretching, I'm going to get some pretty horrible harmonics that they're not meant to be there. Okay, they're not relative to whatever harmonic content is originally there. So what I've done is I've used soothe to get rid of those. Yeah, I've EQ'd, I've distorted, saturated. Yeah, because look, without the soothe, it sounds like this. And with soothe, it sounds like this. It's softer, you know, it's rounder. As I said, my CPU can't handle it, so let's move on. So here, we've got a riser. The riser I've created on Serum. It's quite simply a pulse wave with a triangle wave that has been synced, and we just got some slow modulations happening with certain parameters. Here we got the dimension and the hyper. Yeah, and then I've just layered that up. So you've got the first layer, and you got the second layer, which will just be a slightly different version of the original patch. Maybe I might use like a slightly different pulse wave, for example, and then change that to a sine. Yeah, change the tuning a little bit, and then put loads of processing on it. Sounds like this. And this one's just got a shed load of processing on it, if I remember correctly. And that's what my riser sounds like. And then for the second part of the riser, just to keep it interesting, I've just done a slightly different version of the bottom layer. Just so, you know, it keeps it exciting to listen to. Also, to layer that, I've got some Foley effects. Yeah, and all it is just seagulls that I've transposed up 10 semitones, and then I've processed them. And my seagulls sound like this. Yeah. Gonna have a look at the bass now. So it's really quite simple. I'll be honest with you, there's not an awful lot going on. So I've got a Serum, I've got a sine wave. Sine wave going through a filter, the filter's being driven. And we've got some EQ pushing the third harmonic. A little bit of distortion, it's generating some more harmonics. That's peculiar. What I normally do is I normally do it like that, just to cut off any really low harmonics, which often generate undesirable overtones. But that's how I've done it, so I'm just going to stick with that. And then I've got Serum's compressor. or multi-band mode. Helps it just sit a little better in the mix. And as you can see, I've just done several instances of this just to make it move a little bit differently. So I might have changed the detuning, for example. Maybe I might want to muck about with the drive a little bit. It's just to give it some movement, you know, give it some articulation. Because you've got to imagine, if a proper bass player was playing, he would be perhaps tapping on the strings, getting that kind of like that's that kind of, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then, you know, he might slap the bass. There's loads of different ways you could play a bass. So to keep it interesting for the listener, I've done several instances with slightly different settings on the parameters just to keep it, you know, interesting. And then the bass sounds like this. Let's have a little listen. And on the bass chain, I've got the sub. As you can see, all my sub goes out to bass. Sorry, all my sub goes out to bus 24. Bus 24 is my sub bus. Okay. So you can see here. And then on the sub bus, I've just got a low pass filter, just to make sure there's no other harmonics in the high end coming through that might clash with other parts. My bass doesn't matter too much, to be fair, but it's just what I think sounds best. And then I've got this low cut, or high pass filter, should I say. Just taking out any side signal. On Pro Q3, you've got the option to take out the left, the right, stereo, so that's the whole signal, the mid, or the side. Yeah, I've just taken out the side signal, so my sub is sitting nice and central. Yeah. And then that goes to bus 25, which is my main bass bus. Now, in the B section, I've also got all of these channels going off, and they're all being built off one track. Okay, so let me explain how that works. I've got one track which goes to my main sub, as I said, and then I've got parallels. Yeah, so that's just the same signal being sent to another bus. That's being sent to 2 buses in total. Now, for the B section, I've got quite a lot of distortion going on. Listening back to it, I'll probably do it a little bit differently. There is going to be an extended version of this done eventually. I just had to get it done ready for a performance, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end. Yeah, so this sounds like this, and let's have a look at Span's spectral analyzer. Pardon me. To see what's going on. So we got the original signal, yeah. And now I'm introducing equalisation just to take out some of the low end, some distortion, more EQ, perhaps, what have we got here? Yeah, so I got some filtering, some modulation going on, you know, like you got your phasers, your chorus, all this kind of stuff, a little bit of reverb, and I'm just going to be layering it up until I get something that sounds good. And the reason why you can do that and it's not going to clip is because I've got everything going through a limiter. Yeah, so you know, as long as I'm constantly sculpting it and making it sound nice along the way, you can just run whatever you want through it. Yeah, and then, you know, get the sound that you want. Yeah, so now I'm going to start adding harmonics. So just to remind you, the original signal looks like this. Yeah, as you can see, we got some harmonics starting to build here. Yeah, and then eventually it sounds like this. Yeah, anyway, you get the point. And then just to remind you what I've got on the main bass. I've got some EQ, I've got some mid-side EQ just so the bass sits right in the mix. You want to take out about 300, 400 hertz, anywhere around that, and just, you know, whatever you think sounds good in the high end. And then I've got some saturation, multi-band compression, touch of reverb, equalisation, limiting, and then I've got my sidechain compression. Now, just to go into a little bit of detail why I use sidechaining, there'll be parts of my mix which I really want to punch through at times. In this instance, let's talk about the drums. Yeah, I want the kick and the snare to, you know, be pretty independent at times. So in order to make space for that, I use the sidechaining to duck the signal. There'll be plenty of videos on YouTube that will go into far more detail than that. If you're still not entirely sure what it means or what I mean, yeah, you know, have a look at that. So let's just have a quick little listen, a little example. I'm Chemical Pursuit. I've been your host today, your teacher, your professor, your sponsor, your mentor. Yeah, I am your father. But on a real though, I hope you found this video beneficial. I hope that I've helped you today. I truly do. I hope you respect why I didn't go into too much detail in places. If you'd like to download the tune, you're welcome to. The link is in the description below. It's free. It's a bootleg, of course. I am going to do an extended version of this tune. I obviously had to get something ready for a performance a couple of weeks ago. So there's more to come. I've got lots of original music coming as well. So yeah, keep an eye and an ear out. If you'd like to follow my Insta, you're welcome to. If you want to subscribe to this channel, you're welcome to, because yeah, there's lots of content coming. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye.